All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Hayes Interviews. On the previous episode, I talked to Patrick Wood and Courtney Turner about their book, The Final Betrayal. And on the next episode, after this one, I'm going to be talking to Diana Mora Henry about her book, I Am Andre. But for this episode, for today's episode, I'm very delighted and honored to be talking to Mr. Clive Foster about his book, The Everything List: Your Future in a Tokenized World. Clive, thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here. How are you doing this lovely, cold, dreary, gloomy evening in England?
I hate January. I hate February. I really only come alive in March. I just don't like this time of year at all.
That's it. This time of year is perfect for hibernation and staying
It,
indoors and writing books and reading
uh,
books.
that's probably its only advantage, to be actually honest with you. Yeah, it doesn't sit well with me at all. But anyway, it's a pleasure to be on the show, and I'll try not. I'll try and bring a little bit of levity to
Yes, well, the topics are kind of
it.
like my
Not
conversation with Courtney and Patrick.
not that
It's pretty.
humorous.
It's not that humorous and it's pretty bleak and grim,
Yeah.
but I agree. Bring some levity, bring some lightness. There's no reason to be doom and gloom about it all. So, your book is. So, what I'm going to do by way of introduction, I'm actually going to just jump to the very back of the book and just read a little bit here and just give people an idea about, because I've read the whole book and you can see here maybe you can't see. I've made a lot of tabs. I've put a lot of tabs in the pages. Let me get that. There you go.
Yeah. Tea
See all those
stains.
tabs.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Oh, there's yeah, drool, when my son got hold of it and he chewed the corners. So there's tea stains, there's dribble on here, a lot of underlining, a lot of exclamation marks in the margins. But what I often do when I get a book is I'll go straight to the back and I'll see, right, what's this book based on? Is there references, resources, bibliography, that sort of thing? And you've got a further information section at the back. And it's great. It's got good resources in it. But one of the things you say is this text doesn't pretend to be the picture, like the big picture, um,
No.
but it is a piece of the puzzle. And if you consider it a straight edge, I would be delighted. And I love that metaphor because it's so
Yeah.
appropriate about how we have to learn about reality because it's
No.
scattered and hidden, and it's a little bit over here, a little bit over there, and the mainstream news is just giving us a bogus view of things and an account of things. And so I want to confirm first and foremost this from my point of view, this book is definitely a straight edge. And if not a straight edge, then it's even an entire, you know, frame
Good.
because
Shall we
you've
settle for we'll settle for a corner piece, shall we?
a corner piece. All right, I'll give you a corner piece then.
Okay, that's great.
But I do think it ties so much together from things that I've gleaned from a variety of other sources over the last sort of 6 years since I've been learning and trying to understand the world. Videos here and, J. Edward Griffin, Jekyll Island book over here and how money works and banking dynasties and, financial crashes and markets and economics. This book is such a neat little coherent package that just gives it
Oh,
all to you in a one-stop type of thing that I'm thankful and grateful to you for writing it. So my first question is, what brought you to the point
why
of
did I do
saying,
it?
yeah, I've got to write a book. I mean, I'm glad you did it, but
Yeah,
nobody reads books
why did I do it?
anymore. So why did you do
Um,
it?
yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, why did I do it? I think well, the first thing is I never started out to write a book, which is it was no, it wasn't in my mind. Um, I I think the reason I started writing is that I just got fed up of turning on the TV, opening the newspapers, and just reading stuff that I didn't believe was true. And I was looking out of the window, and the reality of what I was seeing and what I was hearing just didn't match up with what I was perceiving through the media. And I was just getting more and more frustrated of not quite understanding what was going on based on what I was being fed. So I started to read around some of the books that you mentioned. I read and I started to sort of educate myself around alternative ways of looking at the world, and put together some sort of idea that sort of tried to make sense of what on earth was going on at the moment. And of course, the period I'm talking about is around about the 2019 and all that nonsense that was happening at the time. Um, And then at that point, I sort of had a load of stuff in my head, and it sort of made sense to me. Um, but I sort of come from an academic background, and I always found that I always had something in my head. It made sense, but when I wrote it down, it made less sense. it was it was only when I wrote it down. If I could write it down and then read it, and it still made sense, there was a chance there was a grain of truth in it, as opposed to stuff that was flying around in my head, which at the time, yeah, and then it's complete nonsense. If I wrote it down and then I read it back, then yeah, okay, yeah, it sort of that does sort of make sense. So I started writing stuff down, and the the chapter one in the book, which starts off as Great Britain is bankrupt, it literally was the first thing I wrote down. There was no literally, and then from that point onwards, I just wrote it. Uh, uh, it was no I didn't even know what I was writing about when I started it. It was just like I hate to use the term stream of consciousness. It was probably like a stream of anger more than anything else. And I
Yeah.
felt it was a cathartic experience just to get it all out onto paper. And I started writing it without no idea of what the subject matter would be or where it would end up. And it was only really halfway through the writing of this where I thought, well, I can't produce something and just I had maybe by that time about 5,000 to 6,000 words, and then I thought the idea was I'd just put this up on Substack or something along those lines, just to since I was writing this stuff, and then after a period of time, I realised unless I had some sort of structure to this, it was not much point. A Substack which simply said things I'm angry about, it's not, it's not what's the point, you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I felt like I had to structure it in such a way that at least when people started it and finished it, they may not agree with everything in it, but they might have learned something, or it may have changed their point of view of the way the world works. And so I tried to find a theme, and because I come from a technological background, the idea of tokenization came to me, particularly because I feel that as a technology, it's very running under the radar at the moment in a big way. And it's a very, very important technology which will change all our lives. And although a lot of people are writing and talking about things like digital IDs and CBDCs, which are all part of the same process, tokenization is at the heart of it. It literally is the keystone. And so once I had that idea, I said it came together along those lines. And then I came up with the idea of just calling it the everything list, just because it sounded funky at the time. And I sort of regret it now slightly because the title gets totally lost on Amazon. it, it's completely just no point in searching for it at all. It simply queues up under about 150,000 self-help books.
Yeah.
So it's literally
The power of the list and the
as a
life-changing magic of the list.
yeah as a PR exercise, it was a disaster. But that was it really. There was no when I started, I had no intention of writing a book. It was just that it was only when it got down on paper and I had it down on paper that I thought it sort of made sense. And of course, I think as I've mentioned before with you, I like reading from paper. I can't do the screen thing.
Wow.
It doesn't really work for me. I think I even do stupid things like print PDFs off and then read them. It's old fashioned, I'm afraid. But the whole idea of the book, I find quite powerful.
Yeah.
I have to have the book in my hand. Um, uh, I've even gone onto the web and read PDFs online, and then gone and bought the book. Because the book is a very powerful thing.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. Absolutely. That's why I started the
Yeah,
channel. And I had a similar story that I've told many times, but the confusions of 2019 and beyond, the Big C
yeah,
event, the censorship, I just thought, wow, these books are out there and they tell us these hidden aspects of history and the systems that we're living in and some of the reasons why we're living through this craziness now. And I just started hoarding them and really putting them away for posterity. And we were talking before I hit record that I
yeah.
haven't read a lot of these books that I have. I don't want people to think, oh, Nick's read all those books. He's so smart. It's more like these books exist. I want to make people aware of these books, and say, maybe you should think about getting a copy for your
Right.
posterity and for your children and grandchildren. And because I want to bring people back to, like you say, the power of the book, the physical copy,
Mm.
passing it around, annotating it, reading and rereading sections. There's no experience like it that can be recreated digitally.
Yeah, we're also got to be a little bit careful about, having all of our knowledge in a digital format because it can be altered and it can disappear, and we access to it can be limited. I'm sure that will happen in the future. So having these things on the bookshelf, I think is going to be very important going forward.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, the Internet Archive now does on some of its books, does a kind of rental thing where you have to
Yeah,
sign in and make an account and check out the book on loan
yeah,
for a few hours. And
yeah,
it's digital, it's infinitely reproducible. And they're
yeah.
making us give our personal identification information and loan it for a few hours so we can read it. It's preposterous. So yes,
Yeah,
I'm always banging that drum. Buy the books, preserve them, get multiple
yeah,
copies, pass them out, give them as gifts, all that kind of thing. And your
yeah.
book's no exception. I've mentioned it in a few places on my channel. I mentioned it in the previous interview in the
Yeah, you did
episode.
indeed. Thank you very much.
It's like people have got to get it. It's an easy read. It's a nice
It's an
little.
easy read, yeah, and there's
It
some good
is.
gags in it.
Yeah, it's entertaining. It's there's definitely plenty of sugar to make the medicine go down, right? And it's straightforward and it's logically ordered, and it brings
Yeah,
you through the history of money and the
yeah.
different systems right up to the present day, and then a little bit out into the future as well. So it's a really good place to go if you are like me, confused by financial systems and economics and all these other things and investing and graphs and all that stuff and derivatives and trading and stock markets and blah 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 blah. I don't get any of that stuff. I don't have a head for
Yeah.
it.
Well, the thing is, I mean, you're probably aware is, although I said I come from an academic background, that's not an economic academic background. I know nothing about economics at all, which is probably why the book's so successful in that respect. Because I think if you have that background, your idea of how it works can be somewhat tainted or
Yeah.
pushed in a particular direction. I had no preconceptions going into trying to understand how the system worked, um, and therefore finding out how it actually works is actually quite a shock because it's not as you might expect. The way the world economy is actually structured is quite insane. to put a word to find a point on it, the debt-based monetary system that we operate in, which is not very well understood by it's not understood by 90% of the population, is nothing more than a financial fraud, really. And I think if that became more well known and people understood that they were putting their effort and life's work into accruing tokens which were effectively valueless, there'd be more of an outcry and people would understand a little bit more about why things don't work.
Right. That's it. So
Yeah.
you start the book talking a little bit about magicians and your feelings towards magicians, and then
Yes.
you proceed to reveal some of these magic tricks of the financial system and the economic system. Take that theme and tell us a little more about some of these magic tricks that you uncovered.
Well, I mean, basically, I mean, if you sort of the elevator pitch for the book really is the sense that the world economy, as it's currently built, is based on a debt based system where the whole economy is simply based on the management and the creation of credit from nothing. Money itself is simply magicked into thin air by central banks and other financial institutions. And although the creation of credit itself, although the general public perceives as money, which isn't money at all, it's purely a debt-based system. It's all credit. The creation of money itself requires collateral to do it. When you go into a bank and you have to pledge something down, or before the credit code, the actual credit that's created isn't based on anything. There is nothing behind it. In the past, the money that we perceived or credit was based by gold or some other tangible asset. Currently, the financial system and the credit in the financial system isn't based on any tangible asset at all. All currencies are essentially fiat, and as such, the value of those currencies is only based and has any value, the promise that that debt that created it in the first place will be repaid. It's purely based on a trust-based system. If the trust ever breaks down and people realise that the debt will never be repaid, then you realise that the currency itself has zero value. It's I think one of the most, and it's not necessarily something that I've stumbled upon myself. It's a well-known fact that the banking system itself creates credit from nothing. It simply it just magics it into existence. And the strange thing about that is that it also works in reverse. When a loan is created, it creates credit, but when a loan is repaid, the credit it's created is actually destroyed. It's not that it gets moved anywhere or it gets placed in another account or it's given to someone else. Literally, the credit itself simply disappears. It just doesn't exist anymore, which has a rather strange effect in that if the credit in an economy is created from nothing, if all of the debts are repaid, the actual money as we perceive it actually disappears from the economy itself, and the economy simply grinds to a halt. The best analogy that I use in the book is that it's in like a game of Monopoly, where the players have a fixed set of money and the game proceeds. But if the money in the banker's drawer is simply destroyed, if you simply move it out, after a while the game comes to a stop because people simply don't have cash in their hands to pay for fines they might have on the board, getting out of jail, a rent that comes due on a property that they move on to. What happens is the game itself has wealth built into the game in terms of what the players are holding, but the liquidity, as it's called in the financial system, dries up. There's just not enough free cash in the system to make the system work, and that's the problem with the system we have at the moment. Is that we must constantly create credit to keep the system going. Without credit being created constantly, the system simply comes to a dead stop. And that's one of the things that I found when I was looking for the book, and I kind of understand how it works. That was the thing that shocked me the most, really. The idea that money is created from nothing, and that if we ever stop creating money from nothing, the system will stop working after a period of time. It's quite a strange setup, basically.
Mm-hmm.
The problem we have at the moment is that the system we have, which is essentially a fiat system, you're probably aware of that term, has been tried many times. The reason it's so popular and why we use it is that governments themselves are very keen on the fiat system because they can create money from nothing, which allows them to wage wars, back up public programs, make themselves popular, which is what politicians always like. But the problem is at the moment is that because all of the world's currencies are fiat, it was all confirmed. As I say, the Nixon shock in 1971, when you probably a lot of the listeners to the program will be quite aware of that. At that particular point, all the world's currencies became fiat at the same time. Now, the problem with that is that when currencies become fiat, they eventually, lose their purchasing power over time as more and more of the currency is created. The currency itself is debased as more and more enters the system, and you also have another problem is that the proportion of the GDP of the country is eaten up in maintaining the debt that the currency creates. There'll come a point, of course, where either the currency is debased to such a point that it becomes worthless, or the economy itself simply is overwhelmed by the debt burden. I mean, in terms of the UK, we're pretty much close to that at the moment. So is the US. In both cases, the amount of money that we're paying to service our debt burden is close to what we're spending on defence in both cases, which is a ridiculous amount of money. I think I did some calculations that suggested that if we keep on the current trajectory, um, the whole of the GDP of the UK will be we spent servicing our debt burden by about 2035.
Wow.
So, so in 10 years' time, the whole of the taxable income in the UK will simply be used to pay the Bank of England the money that we've borrowed, which is clearly unsustainable. I mean,
Yes.
we can't do that.
And it means we're going to see this come to a crescendo one way or another in our lifetimes. And the thing that I thought was fantastic about your book is you took it back in history, and you just mentioned there the Nixon shock, which you called the day money died. And this part, I wasn't aware of this event, right? So
Okay.
it's
No,
worth dwelling on that. It was new to
yes,
me, but it filled in a gap because I was aware of the gold standard and how precious metals were used to back up the paper notes and the origin of that being the ironmongers, and they would
yeah, yeah,
store
yeah,
the gold and
yeah,
give the
yeah,
tickets out because it's
yeah,
heavy to carry around, blah, blah, blah. I was aware of that, but I didn't know that they did this like bait and switch with the dollar as the world currency, but the dollar was backed by by the gold standard then, and then they just went boom, no gold standard on the dollar. Now all the world's currencies are fiat. And then the other thing you said in the book is that every time a fiat currency system is rolled out, it lasts what, 50 something years?
yeah.
Or yeah, and
That
we're basically at 58 years or something
well,
like that now.
but exactly that. I mean, what happened? As I said, as you quite rightly pointed out, that was 1971 when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. Now, prior to that, during the Bretton Woods Agreement, which is also mentioned in the book, all of the world's currency was pegged to the dollar after the World War II. Um, and the dollar was pegged to gold. So what happened was effectively all the world's currencies via the dollar were effectively on a gold standard or like a proxy gold standard because they were linked to the dollar and the dollar was linked to gold. Once the dollar was removed from the gold standard, it was no longer redeemable in gold. The currencies themselves floated. So all of the currencies became fiat at exactly the same time. Now, as you point out, that the fiat standard has been tried any number of times in history. It is a very, very popular standard for governments to use because, as I said before, they can do all sorts of naughty things when their currency is a fiat-based currency. But as you said, they all came off at the same time, and we know through history, because we can look at other examples of fiat currency through history, is that normally the normal rate of the destruction of the currency in a fiat standard is about 60 years, with quite a strong trend towards the lower end of that rather than the upper end of that. So 60 years is actually quite an ambitious target for a fiat currency. And as you said, that was 55 years ago. Now, the simple fact is, once all of the world became fiat, that really was a clock that started ticking, and people knew that. People knew that once that bomb was going to go off. So there's been a lot of work behind the scenes to mitigate the currency reset, which are about to go through, such that when we come out the other side of it, the people who are currently holding the reins of power, the control of the currency, will still maintain the control of the currency, which is where the everything comes in.
Right. Right. Nice segue. I liked it. Yeah. So this is the thing that's mind blowing. And I think to anybody out there who's not like naturally inclined to these sorts of topics is this was known and has been known for a long time that this system has an end date. It has
Yes,
a use by date
it has exactly that. It was a use by date, and they knew when the use by date was. They could work it out. It was, the famous, 2020. So we knew roughly where it was, and I think in many respects the patient, the world economy, if it's a patient, we're pretty much on life support now. I think it probably died during the GFC of 2008. I think that's most commentators would believe that was when the machine first blipped and the patient went terminal. Since then, literally the whole world economy has been on life support.
Right.
And we've got to the point now where there's not a great deal more they can do to keep it alive.
And actually, I just when I was flicking back through the book, I read this bit, and you said that 2019 and 2020, that was a shot of adrenaline to the heart of the
Yeah,
patient that had been on life support since
yeah,
2008. And this is just as a side note, one of the fantastic things you do all the way through the book is bring in these analogies and metaphors and imageries that really help these people grasp these complex kind
yeah.
of ideas and
And there's
understand where we're at. And you do a really good job at that. So I just
Thank you
want to
very much.
mention
Yeah,
that.
there's a few
So
used car analogies, and I don't know what else I've got in there, but yeah, that's yeah. Well, it's a teaching aid. I've used it on a few more than one occasion.
well, it works really well. And so
Thank you.
and so now we've got this basically dead
It's a,
system, and they want to stay in control of it. They don't want to lose, they don't want
exactly.
to let it go to chaos and anarchy and let the people take over or anything. They want to maintain the power, wealth, and influence and control that they have. So that brings us to the everything list. How are they going to do that? What's that going to look like? And how are they going to pull off this magic trick?
I think the first thing you have to assume is that you have to accept that there is this shadowy group which is in charge. I mean, we know for a fact that currency is created from nothing. So the people in charge of creating currency from nothing are pretty powerful if you can think about it. I mean, if you can't even imagine what that might be. We're not talking about people who have wealth. I mean, we're way beyond that. We're people who could create wealth from nothing. I mean, that is probably almost something that the human imagination finds difficult to get to grips with. The ability to simply create wealth from nothing. Um, and this group knows that we're currently heading for a financial reset. There's nothing to do about it. It's something that they can't prevent. The money system that we're currently working through is on the point of collapse. So they have to come up with something that will prevent their power from dissipating throughout the collapse. Because although they have this power to create money from nothing, although it is actually the seat of their control, it's the seat of their authority. Uh, if the currency system collapses beneath them, they're effectively their authority is lost. So they've got to find some way of getting to the other side of the system, the other side of the reset, without their authority, with their authority being intact. Um, the way they're going to do this is quite ambitious, and it's not something that again that they've dreamt up in the last few years. It's a plan which has been in place for probably well ever since the Nixon shock and well beyond that probably. Um, the problem is with the fiat currency system is that it has a couple of two at least two main weaknesses. The first one is that although they can create currency credit from nothing, and they've done that, and that is the seat of their authority, they require collateral to do it. No one's going to lend you money unless you can put something up to back the loan. And although they have a system where they can create infinite credit, there's not an infinite amount of collateral in the world to back the system that they're trying to create. And that's one of its weaknesses. We have an infinite amount of collateral, infinite amount of credit, but not an infinite amount of collateral, which is one of the reasons why we have this problem with the system every 60 years. It goes through its reset phase. The idea that they've come up with is they're going to try and create a system that is fiat based, where they can create credit from nothing because they also have an infinite amount of collateral. That's the trick, to match up infinite amount of credit with an infinite amount of collateral to back the credit. And for that reason, they're going to try and collateralize every asset on Earth. That's the basic premise of the everything list. It's going to be a list of every economic asset on Earth in an electronic format, a token, which can be traded just like every other commodity in the world. Once that's done, these tokens then can be used as collateral for further loans, and it will produce a system which is far more expandable than the current system. It should last more than 60 years. We don't know how long it would last, but it should last more than 60 years. And other than the economic elements of it, it has an element of control, which is actually probably the most important part of it, is that once the things on the list are tokenized, the control of the list itself becomes control of the things which are on the list. If you control the list, you can control what's on the list because you own them, and everything will be on the list, including humanity itself by the time we've finished. The advantage that gives them is that in the current system, their authority is granted through credit creation. They create money, and that gives them the authority. In the new system, the authority they have will be based on ownership of the tokens, and probably more importantly, ownership of the lists that hold the tokens. The credit system in their new system will be a layer below that. It will layer below that, which will allow them to reset that layer without affecting the layer above it, which is their control plane, the control of the list itself and all of the things that are on the list. Mm-hmm. What that means for humanity, I'm not sure. It doesn't sound like a good thing. It sounds like a bad thing. I think it has important implications to ownership of assets for the individual and our concept of what human freedom means.
Well, that reminds me. So let's dwell on that concept for a moment, ownership, because you go into that in some detail in the book. Some surprising revelations about things that people out there might think they own, but may in fact not actually own. So tell us a little bit about ownership as it currently exists, because there's a good case that they genuinely want us to own nothing and be happy.
They want us to own nothing and be happy. And as I make the case in the book that we probably don't own a great deal at the moment anyway. It's ownership to a large extent is a bit like the fiat currency system, a bit of an illusion. I think most people might be aware that they think they own the money in the bank, but they don't. That's false. So when you put money in a savings account in the bank, the money that's in that account is the legal property of the bank itself. You effectively you've provided them a loan. So all money in deposit accounts or checking accounts in the US is a property of the bank.
And is it right to say that becomes a liability on the bank's sheet now because they have to pay you that back?
Yes, yes. In fact, yeah, that's right. It's a loan effectively when you provide the money to the bank. Effectively, you are loaning the money to the bank. That's how it works. It is a loan to the bank. You are the bank in that respect, and you loan the money to the bank. At that point, because the bank has taken on this loan, it is actually a liability to them. The oddly is that when they loan you money, they provide you with a mortgage. That's actually a liability to the bank. It's really the other way around. You'd think it'd be the other way around, but it's not. It's a liability to the bank because the bank then has this liability, but that you may not actually pay the money back. So it is actually a liability. So it's probably the wrong way around, but there you go.
So this ownership, because mortgage is a perfect example of ownership. People say, I bought a house, and actually you might have 30, 40 plus years left to pay off this loan you took out and the interest that accrues until you get the piece of paper in your hand that actually says you own the house. So you're in the process of buying the house very slowly is a more appropriate way of saying it, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, there is this probably a misnomer that while you're paying off the mortgage, the bank owns the house. They don't. Your name is on the deeds in the land registry, so you physically own the house. But they have a claim on the house. The claim being that if you don't pay off the mortgage, the house belongs to them. So they have a claim on the property, but you physically own the house. But the problem in the UK is that you may own the house, but you don't own the land that the house sits on. No one in the UK owns land
Hmm.
apart from King Charles III and a few other strange places in Scotland, apparently, where they do actually have um, land ownership, actual land ownership. We have leasehold and freehold in the UK. You either
Right.
hold a freehold or a leasehold. Um, a leasehold is simply just that. You're leasing the land from the Crown. It belongs to Crown Estate for a period of time. That period of time is open ended, so that while you hold that lease, it belongs to you. But the land itself doesn't actually physically belong to you in a legal sense. It belongs to the Crown. You'll know that because if you died and there you don't have any inheritance, the land goes back to the person who owns it, which is King Charles III. So
Hmm.
having a house that you own is a useful thing. You don't own the land it stands on, which makes it slightly less useful than you may think.
Right. And what about other sort of things like stocks and bonds and
Well,
pensions and shares, all these kind of
yeah, there
um
the that was quite a revelation going down to working exactly how that particular works in terms of ownership. And if anyone's interested in going down that rabbit hole a little bit further, I would definitely point you in the direction of the Great Taking, which is the work by David Rogers Webb. We might be able to give a link in the show notes for that. Now, he's done a lot of work on exactly how this system works. And like I say, it can get quite complicated. And I suggest someone, if anyone's interested in that, they do follow that down. But what it actually means is that in the UK, no one actually owns shares. The shares themselves are all owned by the brokerage themselves. You may think you own them, but you just have something which is called beneficial ownership, which you own all the benefits of the shares themselves. You can sell them, of course. If they're paying dividends, you'll get them. If you have voter rights, you'll get the voter rights on the shares. But the name on the stock certificate is the name of the broker. In the States, it's even a stranger situation whereby the all tradable commodities securities in the States are owned by a single company through a federal agency, a private agency called DTC. And they have created a company called Seed & Co, which is physically on the name legal ownership of all tradable securities in the US. So if you have any stocks and shares that are held in the US, they're actually legally owned by one company called Seed & Co. It sounds completely nuts, but that's true. Now, the reason that this is set up in this way is that is that well, the story goes something along those lines. Is that trading had trouble with working with paper shares, um, and at some point they gave up moving paper shares from one place to the other, and they decided to digitize the service so that your shares were held as a digital representation. Now, the problem with that is in terms of ownership, is that the ownership of a digital share, which is held in a pooled environment, can't be placed directly for an individual person. They become pooled resources. And as a pooled resource, you can't have a direct ownership of them. So they're effectively all owned by this one corporation. And although you have beneficial ownership, which means you can sell them, you can buy them, under normal circumstances, that wouldn't be a problem. But in the case of insolvency of the company, you're in a long list of something because you are an unsecured creditor on those shares. Um,
and one of the things that's very much worth dwelling on there is under normal circumstances. And
yeah,
so this is as long as the can is being kicked down the road and there's more collateral and liquidity coming into the system, as long as that keeps happening, all good. But what
everything
happens
works fine.
when the can no longer be kicked down the road? And that's what Rogers Webb's book is about, The Great Taking, and
Great
this
thing.
hierarchy of people who have a claim to assets. And at the very top is this group called secured creditors, I think. And you've got a page in here, I forget where it is, but it shows where you are on that list as the owner, and you're like sixth down the list or something,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what it is while the system works normally under normal circumstances, this this problem isn't a perceived issue. It's not something which is going to cause you any problems on a day-to-day basis. The problem will only occur when the system stops working, or when the system stops working legally. These entitlements will be swept off the table to the people who are legally entitled to them, and that person isn't you. It's what they call the GSIBs, the globally systematic important banks, I believe, something along those lines, and they will take all. They will take all of the. It sounds quite conspiratorial and frankly nonsense. And when you read it for the first time, you say, "Well, that can't be right." I mean, that seems unlikely, but strangely, it is actually true. You don't own the shares, and in the case of insolvency, you're not going to get them.
So I found it. It's on yeah, page 118. You've got this list
Yeah,
here, and first dibs, secured creditors. Second dibs, administrator, liquidator fees. Third dibs, preferential creditors. Fourth dibs, secondary preferential creditors and the taxman. Fifth dibs, secured creditors with a floating charge. Sixth dibs, unsecured creditors, you. And that's after the taxman has had a second look. And then you might be glad to hear that there's somebody below you, which is the shareholders, and you've
yeah,
just
they
put
get
here,
nothing.
forget it.
Yeah, but
And
whatever.
with regards to GSIBs, yeah, these are the globally systemically important
Thanks.
banks, GSIB, GSIBs.
Yeah,
And I looked this up when I heard about them from, I think it was Parallel Mike and David Rogers
yeah,
Webb.
fair
They've
enough.
done a few
Yeah,
interviews. And so I'm like, GSIBs, really? And in the UK, people might want to take note of this. There's only two globally secure, global systemically important banks, which means like too big to fail, perhaps,
too big to
is a
fail.
good
Yeah,
way of thinking of it.
that's
There's
exactly it.
HSBC and Barclays
Boxes.
PLC. So if
Yep.
you're not banking with one of those two, then you're not banking with what's known as a global systemically important bank, and you might want to think about where you're putting where you're loaning your money, right? So that's a good little tidbit for people to be aware of as well.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, what normally happens when you have this conversation with people is they say, "Well, that's okay because I've read in the paper and that these are all covered by the insurance policy that comes with banks that cover it in the UK." I think so. Was it the I can't remember what it's called now. Uh, the financial what's, there is a there's a name for it where you're covered for a value up to 110. They changed it in the latest budget.
Uh,
So all deposit accounts in the UK are covered to £110,000, I believe. That's yeah, £110,000. Therefore, you don't have to worry about it because if the bank goes bust, and who the hell's got £110,000 in the current account? So the problem solved. The problem with all of that is that financial. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I can't remember. It's financial. Uh, I'll get it in a minute. Uh,
it'll come back 20 minutes after the
yeah,
call ends.
yeah, that's a financial services compensation scheme. Is that what it's called?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, financial services compensation scheme. £110,000. The problem with that is that it's this particular organisation is set up by the banks themselves. It's like an insurance policy. The banks pay some money into it, and it provides an insurance policy on the deposit accounts if they go bust. The problem is that as you can imagine, the insurance policy doesn't cover all deposit accounts in the UK. I mean, how could it? It would make you would have to have as much money in it as all the deposits in the UK, like
Right.
like a shadow banking system. It clearly would be nonsense. It only covers a proportion of that money, and the current proportion is about 3%. So the
Three.
entire banking system went bust. You'd get about 3 pence on the pound, which is nothing really. In fact, the system was in fact brought to its knees just by the failure of Northern Rock when that failed in 2000. So it's not something which covers everything. In fact, it would only cover a proportion. And what we're talking about here, we're not talking about the failure of one bank. We're talking about the failure of all the banks systematically at the same time. So the financial compensation scheme would is not even there, would not be there to help you in this case.
Right. And so that brings us nicely back to this concept of if everything's working, in under normal circumstances,
Yeah.
there might be people out there thinking, well, things will tick along. They won't let it crash. They won't let it fail. They won't let it. If anyone out there is thinking like that, and I don't think there will be in this audience, but you just got to remind yourself what we lived through, this global or globally orchestrated event, whatever you think it was or the truth behind it. It was globally coordinated and pretty much everywhere was affected. There weren't really any countries that there were a few that went a bit, lighter and easier, but for the most part, everywhere agreed that this event was happening and it needed a certain set of measures and changes to take place. So my point is we're in a global system. That proves it. That event alone proves it. But there's other things like you can fly to another country and put your bank card in the machine and pull cash out, right? We're in a global system. And if they need to push it to the next phase, the next version that they know is coming because it's all fiat everywhere, then what could that look like? What could be the event or the circumstances or the trigger? Would it be quick, overnight, wake up, oh God, all the banks are gone, all the money's gone, here's the thing. Is it going to be slow and painful and gradual? Is it going to be a Great Depression over a number of years? The transformation takes place, and we don't know, and I know you don't know, but um, I want to just stress to people that the fact that we lived through 2020 shows that they have the power and the control over the strings to do a global thing of some kind, right?
I think it's difficult to know the answer to that question. Well, in the sense that they don't have control over everything. Events could overtake them. They are currently constructing this control grid that they're hoping that will be in place to allow their control to pass across the financial reset, which involves the everything list, digital IDs, CBDCs, and a lot of other things that people have been talking about recently. Ideally, that control grid would be in place prior to the event occurring, because that would be their ideal circumstances, and therefore the whole thing would be in a controlled way. I believe that they would like to postpone the event as long as possible because the construction of the control grid is proving extremely difficult and far more complicated than they thought. They have the clear objective of 2030, which is the UN Sustainable Development Goals of 2030. So 2030, I believe, is the target date for at least the control grid to be in place by then. I think that's the original plan. I think they intended it to be in place a lot earlier than this, but it just hasn't proved possible. But obviously, the data centers are being built as fast as possible. The interconnectivity is starting to go in. The surveillance system is being built. I mean, anyone just walking around their city centers now who doesn't believe they're building a surveillance system needs to look up from the pavement. I don't quite understand how that's
You
not
need to
being.
look up from your surveillance device that's filming your
Well,
face as you're looking at
and,
it.
and you really need to leave your tracking device at home sometimes and maybe look up and see what's on the wall and see how many cameras you've passed. So ideally, it would be in place. I think in the book, I talk about this idea of a plan A and a plan B, whereby the plan A would be everything is in place and they can bring the system down in a controlled way. You will simply go to bed one day, I'll wake up next morning, and the ATMs won't be working, the banking system will be down, and there'll be some. It'll be, I don't know, pick any scenario you'd like to think of in terms of a cyber attack, some sort of I don't know, space aliens, you name it, they'll come up with something. And that will be the reason. It will be the Russians, it'll be the Chinese, it'll be the North Koreans. That something would have come up and they would have brought the system down and the solution to the system that they'll then pass to us will it'll be a tokenized solution. It will be tokenized identity, tokenized um, currencies, tokenized UBI, and all running off this. But the problem being is that they're a long way off constructing the grid. It's really not there at the moment. So if it comes down now, and it could come down for any number of reasons, the financial system at the moment is under intense stress. As you can see, probably from things like price of precious metals at the moment, which is uncontrolled and simply starting to move in the wrong directions. Bond markets across the world are looking particularly stressed at the moment, especially in Japan, and things really aren't going to plan. There may be an event which will be outside of their control, which means the system comes down faster than they planned, and there will be some sort of interim messy situation between now and then as they start to get things built up. In some respects, it's in our benefit that the system comes down earlier rather than later, because at least when it comes down without the control grid being in place, there is a chance that we could then use the interim period to build something which is a lot less authoritarian than what they have planned for us.
Right. That's it. Yeah, and I think one scenario you can imagine, and I think you describe in the book, is the ATMs aren't working, your cash becomes useless, your bank account's emptied or whatever. Download this app, right? Download this app, and then QR codes will be supplied, and print them out and stick them on. And this kind of QR code based, app based, biometric scan the face to log in system, you see a rudimentary version of it being rolled out, because people are already using these technologies, QR codes and everything. People use their face to unlock their phone. So these are all the little steps that are being, the totalitarian tiptoe, to use a David Icke phrase, these are, you can see so many of them already. It's really nice to hear you say they're still a ways off getting the system built. That's nice to have that note of optimism, because sometimes I feel like, is it here already? Because I see people using these devices. Like for me, I've got this minimalist phone. It doesn't have I can't even get the internet on it or any kinds of
Yeah,
apps. So
yeah. About that one then.
boom, you beat me. I think you're the only person who's ever beat me. Nice. Top trumps for phone use. But yeah, like being able to leave the devices home, or just delete everything off it, or just downgrade to an older version, or get the minimalist phone. This is really good. This is nifty. It's got chess, it's got a meditation app, but it's got this button on the side that just kills everything. Right?
Yeah,
That button, you flick it, there's nothing, no data going in, no signal going in or out of that phone now.
yeah, yeah.
So there's options and alternatives out there, and unplugging from the social media and the data gathering, the data harvesting, and learning, right? And telling other people about it, and reading books like The Everything List, reading books like Surveillance Valley, which I introduced you to, and gives
Yes,
you a
that's
great
excellent.
history of the
Very, very good
military
book. Yes,
origins of the internet, right?
yes.
So there are things that we can do still. There are it's not game over yet, but you can just open your eyes and look around and see that the bricks, the wall is being built, the system is being built, and there's quite a lot of it done already, but not all of it. So that's good.
Yeah, I think the important point is, and one of the reasons that I read the written book, and is that the first we've got to recognize this is happening. There's so many people that still don't understand what's going on. You have to understand the problem, and see what's happening before you can even address it and come up with solutions. And I don't even think we're at a stage where people understand what's going on. That's the problem at the moment.
Hmm.
We're not even to stage 2 yet, where we can think of what could we do about it. Is there another way of organising this? Is there any way we can oppose it? Because we don't even see it. That's the problem we have at the moment, and that's one of the things that I hope the book addresses. That when you come to the end of it, you at least got an appreciation of what the problem is. It doesn't tell you what the solutions are going to be, because I don't know. And it's not a comprehensive list of all the things which are going into creating the list. But I think it gives you some idea of the problem, and then I'm going to leave it to people with larger brains than me to work out what the solution is going to be.
Well, I've got to say as well about the end of the book that it builds so beautifully to a fantastic crescendo, and that
Well,
end of the book is a real good. It's it's just really well done. And there's a bit that I want to read for anyone who might say this will never happen or they can't let it. They'll fix the system. They wouldn't let that happen, right?
yeah,
Oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. Is
yeah,
you've got an excellent bit here where you list and I'll just read it. There are quite literally hundreds of examples of news events and scandals that were originally labeled as conspiracy theories that turned out to be true after closer examination and the release of official documents. Whole books have been written covering some of these events. For example, the Watergate scandal, Iraq's weapons of mass destruction, NATO's involvement in European terrorism, that's Operation Gladio,
yeah.
the Tuskegee syphilis experiment in the US, the CIA's mind control program MK Ultra, Iran Contra, and on and on and on. The tobacco industry, and Gulf of Tonkin incident. Um, yeah, and it's a really good point and important to remind people is that these events, conspiracies do occur. That's how power is maintained and protected and grown over time, right? And we have non-controversial incidents that show us this that are accepted by the mainstream anybody at this point. Just that, so it's a brilliant list to put in place there. And
I think the other thing towards the end of that book is I think it's just really quite important is that in that particular chapter I say, well, if this is all wrong, and this is just I've just made this up and it's just in my imagination. What's the alternative? What would be the alternative reality? The alternative reality being that that the debt-based system simply creates debt forever and everything is fine. I think that I think that section is does bring it home slightly that what if this is all wrong, what do you how's it going to work, how does it
yeah,
scan out the
that
debt
bit
base.
was laugh out loud funny, I have to say, right? Then the following proposals are true. I'll just read the first section of
Oh
it.
yeah,
The debt-based economic system continues to expand and enrich the lives of its participants by simply creating more debt. To everybody's surprise, the mathematical certainty that the Ponzi scheme will collapse is resolved peacefully and equitably in a manner yet to be defined, and the severe social crisis that nations are facing around health, education, and funding of social care and pension provision are eventually solved by an innovative socio-economic policy that nobody has thought of yet. And it talks about the banking cartel and the laws that are already in place that we've referred to, and the technologies that have emerged, right? The
yeah.
facial recognition that I talked about, the cryptocurrencies, the drones, and the surveillance. Um, why would they have put all these laws in place? Why would they have
What
nudged us to accept all these technological changes to our lives and our
yeah,
devices, right?
precisely.
Um, it doesn't make any sense unless they've got a plan.
Unless it's going to be used for something, it's it doesn't, when you start looking around you, you start to see these things, and why are they there? I mean, did anyone ask for them to be what,
Mhm.
it's I don't know, it's a bit like waking up to a certain extent and seeing something you hadn't seen before.
Yeah, I'll give a good example that everyone can check. Check your local supermarket and go to, the bigger the better, because my local supermarket now has these electronic gates and a
Yeah,
big
yeah,
monitor above. And
yeah,
and it shows me walking toward the gate and it shows a
yeah,
little box around my face,
yeah, yeah,
right? And then if you look down the aisles, you'll see
yeah,
those semicircular dark bulbs that have cameras in them at even points down all the aisles, right? And
Yeah.
then you get to the self-service checkout if you use those, and there's a camera and it shows you your face there again. So you're being tracked,
Okay.
you're being monitored every
All the way
step.
through.
You know
Yeah.
that
What
song by the Police? I just heard it the other day, right? Every breath you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you.
yeah.
Like that song
Yeah.
is the revelation of what the plan is. It's absolute
Yeah.
complete
Yeah.
surveillance, and we've all sleepwalked into it and just
We just
allowed it
want,
to happen, right?
and
And
it's
just
always for
look
our
at your
benefit.
supermarket.
It's always for our benefit. It's for your safety. What do you mean? There's a place full of tigers or something. What the hell's going on?
I don't
What?
know. There's a few dodgy supermarkets in inner city Manchester, that's for sure. But yeah, it's always convenient for your
It's
safety because we
convenience.
care so
Yeah,
much about you, right?
I think we've got to watch for the convenience because the convenience will be our Achilles heel because everyone votes for the convenience. Everyone likes a bit of convenience, don't they?
Mm.
And a lot of this stuff is sold to us in convenience. And yeah, sure. If I did it the hard way, it's going to take me a little bit longer, and it is a little bit. But but if I just use my phone, I just show my face. If I just tap, it is more convenient. But we got to wake up to where this is going.
Yeah, and I think this is, and I often reflect on the Big C event, 2020, and I often think that
Which, which
the
we have difficulty mentioning.
yeah,
Why,
people
why
don't
is
like
that a
talking
problem?
about it. People forget
It's
that.
weird.
I don't even
Yeah,
know. I just got in the habit of saying a Big C
that's weird,
event,
though, isn't
but
it?
people don't like talking about it. That's for sure. It's like
Yeah,
they'd rather just pretend it didn't happen.
yeah.
Nobody wants to analyze it. Certainly, nobody wants to get under the fingernails of what actually happened. What did we live through? People just say, "Oh, during the pandemic, it was great. I got to stay at home and learn French and
Yeah,
you know and just gloss over it
yeah,
almost. It's quite strange.
yeah. It is very strange, isn't it?
But I noticed in that event, and I realized the way young children were being treated at school and basically traumatized, and the way the
Yeah. Oh,
elderly
yeah.
were
They
being
were.
treated and
They were. Yes.
murdered. Um, I realized that this agenda is it doesn't really have me and you in its crosshairs. It has the children and the grandchildren, right?
Absolutely.
And if they don't get it this time, they've probably got a redundancy plan for getting it by 2040, and they'll push it out a little bit, and it's only a matter of time for these people because they'll keep going and going and going unless people stop them, and that's the only.
Uh, I mean, the people who are the banking cartels, whatever one you want to call them. I hate to call them the elites because it does give them a certain cachet, which I don't particularly want to give them. But they've been centuries building this up
Yeah.
in terms of their power base. What do you think? They're just going to shrug their shoulders and walk off into the sunset? They're not, are they? They're going to fight for it. They'll want to keep their power base intact across the other side of the, and they'll do anything to do that. They'll retreat to any sort of. I mean, the pressures that were put on people during the Big C event, as you put it, will be nothing as opposed to what we'll see coming to us to corral us into this digital prison that they're building.
Hmm.
That was just a test to see what they could get away with and what they couldn't get away with, what works, what doesn't work.
Hmm.
What oh yeah, that worked. The family thing, yeah, we could that was a hot button, save granny, we could use that next time, the finance thing that wasn't so good, they're working out what it is, what's the socio-economic buttons that they can press to make us move into a particular direction.
Yeah.
That's what that was all about.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're making notes, and they said, okay, next time this happens, to make everyone move to the left, we're going to have to do this. Make them move to the right, we're going to have to do something else altogether different. So, it was a good training ground for them, I think.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think it was a data gathering exercise,
Well,
and we
yeah,
many of us we often learned about Event 201, right? This sort of simulation, pandemic simulation with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and sitting around the table and doing this months before the real one was announced. But I even think certain elements of Big C were a simulation. It was like, okay, let's try this. In this country we'll run it to this degree, and in that country we'll run and slightly different variations on a theme, to just see what people go along with and where the pushback is. And everyone revealed themselves
Yeah.
pretty much. If you were online arguing like I was on Facebook, like arguing with family members and friends, like,
Yeah, that's the problem.
they know who is skeptical and
Yeah,
questioning and trying to
yeah,
speak up about it and do something about it. And they know who's going along and will defend it and will fight for that narrative. And they gathered all that intel, they got all that information, and that is going to feed into whatever
yeah.
happens to nudge people or bring people into this everything list tokenized system. So that's another thing to bear in mind as well.
There's I think one of the things you do find out when you start looking at this is that whenever they've got something in the pipeline, they always try and run a trial first. There's
Mhm.
always a mini version that goes ahead just to see whether things work, whether they don't work. I mean, there's several examples of that in the book, whereby elements of the everything list itself, the tokenized future that they have, they'll run little trials to see whether this works, see whether this works, which is the best way of doing this. And like I say, they hone and data gather from this and improve the presentation until they get it just right. So the idea that these things just come out of nowhere is false. You can always find some sort of trial that went ahead of the major rollout that gave them some idea of whether these things would work or not.
Right.
Uh, NFTs and like, as I said before, things like the Bored Ape stuff and that I mentioned in the book, in terms of just trying things out to see whether or not they'd stick or not. And each one of them builds into elements of the list that will then be forced upon us.
Yeah, and there's the I was thinking of Doge, this meme coin which
Well,
became very, very valuable at one point, right? Just totally out, it was worth nothing. It's ones and zeros,
yeah,
and suddenly people buying and selling it and making money
yeah,
on it.
yeah. I mean, there's the Bored Ape stuff. Yeah, there's several examples of doing something very, very similar to that. The pack stuff that I mentioned, the artwork that worked on the merge, and there's lots of examples of this sort of stuff just being pushed out there. Just see whether that works. See whether that works. Yeah, that was successful. We'll build that in. Or that wasn't so successful. We'll pull that one back. They're very clever
Mhm. Yeah.
in a clandestine way.
Well, that's it. And like you say, they've had there's been a lot that's gone into the planning of this.
Yes.
This has been a kind of a totalitarian's dream to have what's coming. The level of surveillance is one thing, but then it's the control and nudging and manipulation of people's behavior that is going to come, and that we're already there to a certain degree. People are already, certainly young people. I mean, I can't imagine what it'd be like to grow up with social media, knowing that you can be bullied online or filmed or shared, or anything you ever do, any mistake you ever make can be immortalized now on the internet for the rest of your life. There's no being carefree and making some silly mistakes and embarrassing yourself and then just outliving it and moving on, learning the lesson, and that just becoming a story. Now it's like filmed and it's there and it's tagged and it's against your name forever. And that might affect you in the future, your employment prospects or your relationship prospects or whatever, right? The stupidity of childhood, the innocence, the carefree, happy go lucky, make mistakes and learn from it is
I think
totally changed forever now. And that's an
it
absolute
is.
travesty.
It is. I mean, going back to in terms of the planning, I mean, obviously you had the conversation with Patrick Wood and around technocracy, which is also mentioned in the book in a brief. And most of it, obviously, taken from Patrick's work. Excuse me, but the point is that it has been long in the planning, and the idea behind a system of totalitarian control, which is based on information gathering and running society as if it was a machine, if you like, or a company or a model that you can tweak and simply move the knobs around. the idea of a technocratic economy has been around for a long, long while. It's a very, very deep concept. The difference between now and then is that when it first was posed, the technology just wasn't up to providing the solution, but it is now. That's the difference between now and then. We have the technology now to produce the everything list. It could be built. There's nothing stopping us. Bits of it are still missing, scaling it, making it work, but all of the bits are now in place. We have the data centers, we have the blockchain, we have the AI, we have the surveillance state, we have the social control. All the building blocks are slowly being placed into position. They just need to be put together like a Lego set and finally snapped into place. The dream of the technocrats just wasn't possible in the 1930s because it just wasn't possible technically to do it. But it is possible to technically do it now. And another thing is that you now have a population which has been socially conditioned to accept it. I think that's another important position that people need to think about. They are willing now to give up their freedom for convenience. A large proportion of the population would do that. They're used to being tracked. They're used to having their privacy invaded. They're used to having their information being used as a commodity. And that wasn't true in the 30s. Interesting, going back to the book regarding the internet, I think we mentioned this before, is that when the internet was first brought out, and I said, yeah, that, and it was, yeah, exactly that. And people were aware that their information was being used online and being captured online when it first came. There was huge social unrest based on that. They literally, there was people demonstrating in the streets and saying that this is something we just don't want. That the whole idea that someone could capture the most innocuous information at the time about the person, where they lived, and what they might be doing. There was huge unrest, and nowadays we just take it for granted. But of course, they're going to capture information. Of course, they're going to put an app on my phone which will send my location back to some third party. Nobody thinks anything of it.
Yeah, people talk openly about, oh, my phone must have been listening to me, haha, because look, it sabotaged that thing that I mentioned,
Yeah,
and just
yeah,
blasé about this. And like,
yeah,
you're absolutely right. That was pre-internet when people were up in arms about this
really,
information being
yeah, very
gathered and,
angry.
and stored.
Their privacy could be invaded in such a way. Nobody cares. It's, I mean, whenever you install an app, install an app on your phone, and then just scroll down to see exactly what information they're asking for the app. Invariably, it will be something like location. Obviously, information about, maybe your contacts lists. It just gets sucked straight out.
Mhm.
Nobody thinks anything on it.
Scroll, 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 accept. Give me the convenience, give me the
Yeah,
gain, give
ding.
me the discount,
Yes.
whatever it is.
And then how did they know that? Well, there you go. Yeah,
Terms and
Flappy Bird.
conditions, yeah.
That was Flappy Bird on your phone that told them that. I'm afraid. You shouldn't have installed it. You know.
That's it. That's it. So there's still time. There's still time to put the phones down, to talk to our young people and our children, and just explain to them that this is an insidious military. I'll just plug Surveillance Valley again. It's a military weapon. It's been weaponized. The point of it is surveillance. The point of it is to gather intel and data and control people and nudge people for what purpose, right? Who would want to do that? Somebody who cares about you, who loves you and likes you and wants you to flourish and have a great life? Pretty unlikely. So there is still an opportunity for us to unplug, stop taking the devices around with us, reconnect with actual reality, human beings, awaken the skills that are now gone, like remembering directions between places, right? Map reading or
Yeah,
spelling or
yeah,
or
that's yeah.
handwriting with a pen and paper, like I did my notes for this interview. There's so many things that you can resurrect because they're on the decline. Young people I hear now don't even do any like
Well,
pen to paper writing anymore.
no, no, that's a lost skill. That's
Yeah,
gone.
and
The
so
ability
so much
to
is being
handwrite.
lost, so much is at stake. And I asked this question to Courtney and Patrick. I'd ask it to you again. So, what do you think is at stake here? Ultimately, what is at stake?
I think what's at stake is um, humanity's ability to live a free life. I don't think it can be underestimated that's what's at stake now. Um, once the everything list is finally assembled, and they have this database of all assets on the earth, you will be one of those assets. Um, and just like everything else, you just become a commodity which can be traded and collateralized to feed into their system. Um, the control will be complete in the sense that you will exist only as a digital twin in that system. They have control of the twin. If they decide to control that twin in any particular way, that has a direct effect on your life with regards to where you can travel, where you can move to, what you can spend your money on, who you can interact with, what book you can buy, perhaps. And the ultimate problem would be if they then decided to delete that digital twin, then that deletes you, unfortunately, as someone who can interact with society. That's where we're going.
Right on. Well, Clive, I think that's no place better than that to bring the conversation to an end. So,
It's
one
been great.
final thing is where can people find your work? Where can they buy the book? Any shout outs you want to make? People need to
Um,
learn this stuff, so tell them where to go.
well, I mean, read books. That's how I started, and I can see behind you, you've been reading a book. From my point of view, I probably my greatest education in this thing came from the good old uh, yes, uh,
Nice. Creature from Jekyll Island by
Creature of Jekyll
G. Edward
Island,
Griffin,
which
right?
I think I've read 3 times now. I just think that's
Wow.
just such a stunning read. I don't think anyone can read that book and not come out a changed person,
Wow.
because
That's quite an endorsement, yeah.
I think so. So read books, try and engage with alt media in a critical way. You don't have to believe everything that comes out of alt media, but there's a lot of good work out there. I particularly like the channel that Miles Harris creates. He's very much into the tokenized agenda. He covers it in far more technical depth than I do. I believe my book is a primer. I mean, if you're interested in this sort of thing, it's a primer.
Mhm.
Get into it. You might find some stuff that's interesting there to push you in certain directions. Miles really takes the economic side and tears it apart. He knows it inside out. So Miles Harris's Substack. We mentioned Parallel Mike, who
Mhm.
does something like very similar to this. Their Substacks. I have a Substack. I'm sure you'll put it in the notes, that you can pick it up. I mean, the other thing that's worth noting is, although the book itself is available on Amazon, save my soul. Um, what else can you do? Um, I'm sure you'll put that in the notes so you can pick up a hard copy. The reason it's a hard copy is because I can't read my own book on screen, so I had to print it off so I could read it myself. I don't like reading stuff on the screen. If you feel like getting a paper copy, it's there, but it's also serialized on the Substack if you don't want to pay the money and you just want to read the book. Most of it is now up on the Substack, and I'm sure the Substack address will be part of the show notes. So you can
Yeah.
just read it from there. I am on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it these days, but I'm a bit of a lurker. I don't really post much, so there's not much point getting that out. I'm a reader rather than a producer on that particular thing. So my Substack, which will be in the sub notes, and a link to the book if you feel such inclined to buy it. I'd be very pleased if you did so.
And I'll encourage people as well that it is worth buying. And as you just said, it's a primer, so
Yes.
it's normie friendly, for want of a better word, I would
Yeah.
say, right? Because everyone, this affects everyone, and everyone cares
Yes.
about the rising prices, and everyone is
Yes.
should be thinking about why the hell is everything so expensive, and where's it going, and what does it mean, and what's the real reason behind it. We know the politicians lie, so there must be something else going on. And the revelations contained in this book, it'll bring people up to speed in 300 pages, which is just an amazing feat that you've accomplished here. So I
Thank
would
you.
encourage people, get it, have copies lying around when people come around for a dinner party, right? And just you can
Yeah,
just mention, oh, what's that? Oh, it's the everything list, yeah,
yeah. I have tried that trick. It can ruin your dinner party.
well, you
Believe
got to
me,
take risks in life.
you have to. Yeah, you just got to throw it out there.
Well, Clive, thank you so much for talking
So
to
it's
me
been a
today. It's
pleasure.
been an absolute pleasure, and
Yeah.
yeah, all the best with getting the book out there, and
Yeah.
a thank you as well for putting it up on Substack for people. It shows
Yeah.
you care about getting the message out.
Just get it
It's
out.
not
Just
just
get it
about
out.
sales and making
Yeah.
all that precious fiat that you're going to make from selling millions of books. It's
Yeah.
about education
It's
and
about
helping people understand what's going on, and
exactly that.
you've done a great
Great.
thing here.
Thanks.
All right,
Okay.
take
Thanks a lot,
care.
guys. Cheers, mate.